Morning, y'all. Rob the American here. Have I got a treat for you today? We're going back to see our good pal Mike, the guy who has the ultimate vintage Rolex collection. And this time we're going to talk about a watch that we didn't have a chance to speak about at all the first time, and that is the Rolex Explorer. We're going to talk about its legacy, why it's an icon. Well, I'll let him describe it to you. Anyway, stick around. All right, y'all. You remember this face, our good friend Mike?
Nice to have you back, Rob. I didn't think it would be so soon, but
well,
here we are.
Listen, thank you for having us back. And y'all remember Mike? He is the, how should I put this? The British king of Rolex.
Not said by me, but a few people have said that.
Well, listen, from your collection and everything, I don't think anybody can top this.
I'm not here to boast. It's just something I'm really passionate about. So,
all right, and as I said, our today's focus is going to be the Rolex Explorer. And Mike,
this is a particular area of interest of mine. Well, I'm going to start with this one. This is a reference 6098.
Okay.
It's a 36mm stainless steel Oyster Perpetual non-chronometer watch. It's very typical of the watch that Rolex was supplying to the climbers on Mount Everest in the early exploration expeditions.
Wow.
And Rolex wanted to be associated with these sort of big achievements. So in the early 1950s, they supplied the Sir John Hunt Everest teams with Oyster Perpetuals very similar to this.
Okay.
The watches were amazingly reliable. The feedback was very positive. Rolex were very pleased with the response they were getting. The only real drawback was that although these have luminous dials and hands, they weren't really contrasting enough for the wearers to actually read the time very easily.
Okay.
Rolex took in this sort of feedback, and they came up with the classic Explorer model we know today. This is a reference 6150. It dates from 1953. It has the black background that we know with most of the Rolex sports watches now, and then it's got the 369 dial layout with the luminous Mercedes pattern hands, and this really provided a good contrast. It was a very legible dial, and basically these were amazingly successful. When Sir Edmund and Hillary successfully ascended Everest in early 1953, he was wearing a silver dial Oyster Perpetual. Okay. That watch is in the Beyer Museum in Zurich.
Oh wow! And people can go visit.
They certainly can. It's a sort of closed museum, but it is there in Zurich.
And this is kind of the look that we've come to know as the Rolex Explorer, even today.
I've got an example here. This again is a reference 6150. This is what I call my tribute to Mount Everest. This particular watch was supplied to the later Everest expedition teams and also to other climbers. So on this particular watch, I had the good fortune to meet George Band, who was on the original 1953 Everest expedition.
Wow.
And Jamling Norgay and Peter Hillary, the sons of Sherpa Tenzing and Sir Edmund Hillary. I was wearing this watch, and I actually got the three of them to sign the strap on it. The reason being that George Band was wearing a very similar watch to this, only a few serial numbers away.
Oh, right.
And so this is actually my tribute to Everest. It's a really nice watch. I just enjoy it, and it's such a lovely sort of classic timepiece.
Very cool, very cool.
And then we go on to the first chronometer reference. This was the 6610, sometimes referred to as the OCC because the chronometer designation is Officially Certified Chronometer rather than Superlative Chronometer Officially Certified.
Okay.
And this is a really nice reference. It's dating to 1956, a few years later. I've got one on my bracelet here, which actually belonged to a guy in Tasmania. He bought it. He was in the Navy in Tasmania, and he bought that in his service, I think in Singapore in 1956.
How did you come by it?
He contacted me out of the blue, sent me a couple of pictures of the watch. I suggested a price, And 3 days later, it just arrived in the mail.
Just like magic.
There was I hadn't paid for it in advance. The watch was exactly as described. He knew it was going to an enthusiast, and so I just sent him the money, and happy addition for my collection.
Very good, very good. Okay.
So following on from the 6610 chronometer, I'd like to bring out these two watches. These are what we sometimes refer to as the Air King Explorers. They share the same reference as the Rolex Air King 5500. These particular watches are 34mm cases. They're not chronometer movements. The one that's on the left is a Rolex Explorer Precision. The one on the right is a Rolex Explorer Super Precision.
Okay.
And that one has the little gilt underline on the dial.
Wow.
We believe that was designating tritium was the luminous compound rather than radium, and it was almost like a secret signature that Rolex put on the dial for their watchmakers to recognize them. Unfortunately, these are very commonly faked watches. In the 1990s, the value of an Air King might have been £200-300. But the Explorer watches were very collectible in Japan, so a lot of unscrupulous dealers were actually fitting Explorer dials and hands to these watches,
Really?
and then sending them out, and obviously making quite a bad buck on that. 9 times out of 10, the watches I'm presented with now as Air King Explorers, they are actually fake watches.
Really? And you can tell.
Well, I tend to prefer the watches that have the original gloss gilt dials with the matching hands. You know, those are from the early 60s period. Most of the ones with the later sort of white printed dials, I do believe, are fake.
Okay.
But then we'll move on from there onto the most famous iteration of the Rolex Explorer. This is the 1016. This is the iconic.
This is right. Okay.
Yep, 36mm case, chronometer rated movement. This particular example is 1963. It's got the gloss gilt dial with the chapter ring around the outside. It just sort of closes in the minute markers, and it's a very attractive looking design. These dials, they really come to life in daylight. They're a gloss gilt background. They've got what we call the gilt galvanic print, which is sort of recessed into the dial. And there's just so much life in the dials. Another example here, this is a little bit later, this is about 1965, and again it's a gloss gilt dial, but this one has the open minute markers that go to the edge of the dial. But in natural daylight, they're just such a beautiful dial to look at.
I mean, as old as this is, this looks very vibrant.
It is, yeah. I mean, they're really an attractive watch. Following on from that, I think Rolex started cutting costs, and they moved on to the simple matte black backgrounds, which were just sort of a painted finish on the dial with white printing that just was applied onto the dial surface, and still very functional and very recognisable.
What year was this?
This one's a 1971. It's a Mark I dial. It's got what we commonly call the frog's foot coronet.
Oh, right.
So the little Rolex crown marker, it looks like a frog's foot. You'll probably get a close-up later, but
sure.
That's just a nice example there.
So if somebody says, I want the frog's foot Explorer, they would know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
there you go, folks. Very cool.
The finer points on these things. The Explorer 1016. I mean, it was in production until about 1988. This is one of the sort of last examples. This is dating from about 1987. Rolex finished the 1016 on an R or an L serial number, and then they superseded them with a sapphire crystal version of the same watch with the white gold surround dial. This is a reference 14270. And again, still 36.
What year was this?
This one's actually quite a late one. This is year 2001, but the first of the 14270s probably came in as the 1016 was being phased out in about 1988.
So little by little, they're making changes. Each iteration, they're making changes, upgrades, this and that.
Yeah, they are improving the watches. In the early sort of 2000s, I think Rolex lost their way a little bit. I mean, the fact now that they're producing a watch in two-tone Rolex or in gold and steel,
right.
I don't think that sort of lends itself to the Explorer designation. I think.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Now I know the current catalog has the Explorers in 36, but it also has Explorers in 40.
Yeah, I mean, they sort of messed around with it a little bit. The iconic
And there was
size,
a 39, I think.
There was a 39, but traditionally it was a 36mm. It was the most simple Rolex professional model, And it didn't have a rotating bezel, it didn't have a chronograph, it didn't have the calendar feature. It was just a simple timepiece.
Right.
And then when Rolex started messing around and put it into a bigger size case, and then they were changing the case proportions and brushing the side of
Well, and as you started to mention, they came out with the two-tone, with the gold and stainless steel. Was that considered, I guess, by collectors, was that considered sacrilege in terms of messing it around?
I think it took away the purity. The 1016 was just such an iconic design, and then when they started to bring it out in two-tone and messing with the size,
right.
I think they just sort of lost the focus really with the Explorer. But
well, I have a good friend who has the current 40, and I'll tell you that when I put that on the wrist, it looks outstanding. I think, to me, 36 is very small, but the 40, now that may not be considered authentic in a certain sense, but to me it looks so good.
I think when they started to mess around with the sizes, they had the wrong proportion of hands. There was an early example which had a short hand on this big background of the dial, and it just didn't sort of balance, and it didn't have the sort of finesse that you expect with Rolex.
Right.
These modern references, though, they don't.
for all the people that are live and breathe the Explorer, it's, I guess. And then I think you said.
Of course, I've got to mention the Explorer too. This is the iconic watch, referred to as the Steve McQueen, but he was never actually photographed or seen wearing an orange-hand Explorer. I think the Italian term, the Freccione, which means little arrow, is probably more appropriate.
And when was the Explorer 2 date? When did that all date?
It came out in 1971. It was using sort of the GMT master function movement. I think that was a caliber 1570 they installed in this particular one.
Okay.
And obviously the 24-hour pointer corresponded to the calibrations on the fixed bezel.
And then the Steve McQueen.
It was just a name that was given to the watch in the same way that the Paul Newman Daytona. Again, that was just a name that collectors sort of assigned to that particular model.
And if you say I want the Steve McQueen Explorer 2, then that
collectors, dealers would know what you're referring to, even though technically it's an inaccurate designation.
Okay.
But we know what you're talking about.
Very good. All right, Mike, listen, thank you very much for sharing all of this.
It's been a pleasure once again, Rob.
And definitely, if somebody's interested in the Explorer and going, what would you suggest? What's the best way? What's the safest way for somebody who's interested in looking at vintage
I think
Explorers?
anybody who has an interest in vintage Explorers, the 1016 is an iconic reference that has to be in any collection. The 1655, the Steve McQueen, those two are really iconic watches from Rolex. I couldn't call myself a Rolex collector if I didn't have these two watches.
Well, I don't think, you might be accused of a lot of things, but I don't think anyone can accuse you of not being an authentic Rolex collector.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, Mike, thank you. Thank you very
Rob,
much.
thank you once again.
Appreciate it. All right, y'all, that's going to be it for me today. Wow, we've got a huge thank you to our good pal Mike for sharing his vintage Rolex collection with us. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure and give it a like and subscribe to my channel and leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts on the Rolex Explorer? Is this something that you've had in your collection? Something that you would want? Any one of particular stand out? And be sure and follow me on Instagram. It's Rob the American. That's Rob_the_American. And join me again for some more watch talk. Y'all take good care.